Coming to you from the Hudson Media Group studio, this is Talking Politics, and I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, top 100 Latino via the Latino Spirit online magazine, the weapon of mass disruption in Garden State media, and without a doubt, the people's choice and the people's voice. Yes, it's me, ladies and gentlemen, Fernando Uribe. Once again, happy spring to you all. Again, it's getting a little bit warmer. The days are getting a little bit sunnier and a little bit longer. And of course, there's always a lot to talk about here on the show. So let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. Now, ladies and gentlemen, normally I like to opine on a variety of different topics concerning politics, economics, even pop culture. But today I'm going to pay respect to a very dedicated public servant, and that is New Jersey State Senator Ronald Rice. And a special shout out to Nikita Bukharoff from the New Jersey Monitor for his report on this story and, quite frankly, sort of providing excellent material and content on the life of Ronald Rice. Now, again, Ronald Rice recently passed away at the age of 77. He was known as a maverick in the New Jersey State Senate and certainly a iconic figure in the city of Newark for decades. Now, Ronald Rice was born in the state of Virginia and served in government in various levels for approximately 40 years, including 36 years in the state Senate, which ultimately made him one of the longest-serving state senators before resigning his position last August amid many rumors about health issues that were just compiling and were frequently keeping him out of the State House. Now, according to Leroy Jones, the state chairman for the Democratic Party, wanted to say, quote, Senator Rice always spoke his mind, fought for the principles he believed in, and refused to back down. Certainly very, very important words from the state chairman. He also wanted to say, but at the same time, he was a gentleman who, regardless of whether or not he agreed or disagreed on public policy, he always maintained friendships across the aisle and cordial relationships with everyone he ever encountered. In the legislature, Rice's positions usually aligned with those held by his caucus, though at times he would split with Democrats on issues such as marijuana legalization and initially opposed the legalization of same-sex marriage. Subsequently, he voted in favor of a bill that codified same-sex marriage protections earlier last year. His independence sometimes kind of annoyed party leaders. For example, in 2019, when he accused Governor Phil Murphy, Assembly Speaker Craig Coughlin, and then State Senate President Steve Sweeney of feigning support for black lawmakers and their priorities to secure their votes on other legislation, which is probably right on the money since we all know that Democrats, at least the ones in Trenton, right, in big leadership positions like Governor Murphy and the far left love to virtue signal and love to placate the black and brown vote when it suits them. And then once they get reelected, so much for that. So, Ronald Rice wasn't wrong on that. Rice also wrote in a letter to Governor Murphy at the time, quote, whenever we meet with white elected state officials and staff to effect positive change in the areas of social justice reform, criminal justice reform, equal employment opportunity, and the quality of life for people of color, we are met with patronizing conversations, a smile, the pretense of understanding, and empty promises for cooperation. Actually, Ronald Rice wasn't wrong on that either. In a statement, Governor Murphy said, quote, Rice never hesitated to speak out when he saw injustice, nor did he back down from a challenge. His legacy and example will continue to inspire this administration and all of New Jersey's leaders to work towards racial equity and expand opportunity for underserved communities. Now, Ronald Rice's career in public office began on the Newark City Council in 1982. He will represent the city's West Ward for 16 years before giving up the position to become Newark's deputy mayor in 2002. He then gave up the latter job to mount an unsuccessful campaign for Newark mayor 4 years later. Now, Ronald Rice entered the legislature in 1986 after winning a special election called in the wake of the death of State Senator John Caulfield that August. He was a former U.S. Marine Corps sergeant, and he would go on to serve in the Senate for decades, surviving multiple competitive challenges, including a 1997 campaign that found Rice running for re-election off the line and without any party support against former Newark police officer Lawrence Brown Sr. Now, his resignation in 2022 came 2 years after the death of his wife Shirley in August of 2020 in the height of the pandemic. Senate colleagues and others who knew Rice well said that the senator was changed by her death. The two were married for 35 years. Obviously, that's a beautiful, beautiful sentiment. And certainly, they're together now. And without a doubt, if you knew Ronald Rice, you had the chance to talk to him. He was a very dedicated husband and father. It's a comfort in knowing he was a servant through and through and has transitioned in his own time with those that he lost and he loved. And he's at peace now and resting, according to Assemblywoman Shavonda Sumter, who succeeded Rice as the chair of the Legislative Black Caucus. Rice is survived today by his two children. Yuki Rice-Fiassen, and former New York City Councilman Ronald C. Rice. Well, folks, I had a chance to interview Ronald Rice multiple times on different podcasts. And I have to tell you, for a guy who, many would say maybe he was a maverick or one of the lions of the state legislature, he was pretty sharp. He was always witty, he was always kind, and he was a gentleman. And we would agree to disagree on multiple occasions when it came to policy. We all know that State Senator Ronald Rice leaned left, but not crazy left. Not the crazy left that's occupying the leadership positions in Trenton, in the state Senate and the state assembly, right? Whether it be the state Senate president, whether it be the majority leader or anything else. I mean, we all know that there are working class, blue collar state senators that are commonsensical when it comes to economics, when it comes to biology and science. And I have to say that Ronald Rice was also one of them as well. He didn't want to acquiesce to all the woke nonsense that we all know, folks, is pervasive in Trenton and has been for some time, especially with the election of Phil Murphy in 2017 and unfortunately his re-election in 2021. But don't get it twisted, folks. Ronald Rice was a guy who stood up for his principles and stood up for his district. He'd stand up to the governor, whether it be Phil Murphy, whether it be Chris Christie, or even John Corzine. And we all know that those are three very different governors along policy lines and, of course, across party lines as well. But that never, ever intimidated Ronald Rice in the slightest. And that's the sense I got from speaking with him off the record, obviously off the air, but also on podcast. And he was a guy that, quite frankly, I really treasured our conversations. He was a guy that, respected me and looked at me with, hey, listen, I might be a conservative, I might lean too far right for his taste, but certainly a guy that you could engage in and a guy that, quite frankly, you could have a conversation with. And you know what? We need more of that in this quite frankly, this utterly toxic political culture, folks, that we live in, right? It's this climate that we live in where tribalism is almost on steroids. Listen, I get it. I'm a conservative. I don't apologize for it. And I have many friends across the other side of the aisle in academia, in journalism, who could be liberal. Folks, again, you could be liberal. You can lean a little bit left. That's not a problem for me. But when you lean too far left and can't articulate your positions or policies without virtue signaling, gaslighting, or quite frankly, just, preaching victimhood at all hours of the day, well, then you lose me. And then you lose a lot of people in the middle, and subsequently, you lose a lot of conservatives altogether. But that wasn't Ronald Rice, a guy, again, who was dedicated to his family, dedicated to his country, dedicated to his state, but more importantly, dedicated to his district. And he's the guy that fought for issues that mattered, whether it was marijuana legalization, whether it was, and he took his time to come around when it came to same-sex marriage. And again, he was a deeply religious man, a man of faith, and that's not something we should trivialize or demonize either. Far too often, people of faith are sort of vilified in this sort of political culture when it comes to issues like same-sex marriage and other things involving the alphabet army here in New Jersey, right? All the LGBT plus Q minus division sign, everything else. But that wasn't Ronald Rice. Ronald Rice heard you out, but he had his positions, and he made it known, and he wasn't afraid to speak up. And guess what? Those are the type of legislators that we continue to desperately need in both the state assembly and in the state senate. I get it, folks, that, New Jersey is a blue state. There are pockets that are red. There are pockets that are purple. But certainly, folks, you know what? Regardless of that, it doesn't matter if you were red or blue. What mattered to people like Ronald Rice was just being fair, being equitable, and just being commonsensical. And quite frankly, that tends to be lost in the state legislature, especially in leadership positions and even in the governor's office. So you know what? My sincerest condolences to the family of Ronald Rice. He was 77 years old. He recently passed. And again, on behalf of the Hudson Media Group and Talking Politics with Fernando Uribe, I extend my condolences to his family, and rest well, Ronald Rice. You earned your time, you earned our respect, and quite frankly, you earned yourself an amazing legacy. May you rest in peace, and may you get to enjoy the time with your wife now that you didn't in recent years. And of course, folks, it's always sad to see such a dedicated legislator leave us, but you know what? He leaves us with tremendous memories, tremendous accomplishments, and more importantly, just being a tremendous man. That's who Ronald Rice was. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. Now some local stories for your consideration. And a special thank you to John Hines, the editor of the Hudson County View, for his report on this story. And it's something that really kind of hits home for me because I got to know the man. But Sudan Thomas might be finally meeting his legal end. Now, the former president of the Board of Education in Jersey City and also the ex-chief of the New Jersey Reentry Corporation could take a plea deal ultimately in a case that accuses him of abusing both of his roles to embezzle money. And according to U.S. District Judge William Martini, who wrote it recently on March the 10th, quote, an order granting a continuance of the proceedings in the above captioned matter from March the 15th of 2023 through and including May of 15th of this year to permit the defense counsel the reasonable time necessary for effective preparation in this matter and to allow the parties to continue plea negotiations. Now, again, in November of the same year, last year, the U.S. Attorney's Office announced a 26-count indictment alleging embezzlement, money laundering, and fraud. Sudan Thomas has been accused of embezzling over $45,000 from the now defunct Jersey City Employment and Training Program. Specifically, federal prosecutors charged that Thomas caused checks to be drawn from the JCETP accounts that were made payable to others, but ultimately received by Thomas or used to pay his debts and expenses. So, for example, Thomas caused certain checks to be issued to Paul Appel, an ad attorney who served as the outside counsel for the Jersey City Education and Training Program. And Appel then redirected the funds to Thomas, including by issuing checks made payable to Next Glocal, an entity for which Thomas was a director, which were then deposited into the Next Local bank account subsequently. Under the guise of collecting repayments for loans to the campaign or reimbursement for other purported campaign-related expenses, Thomas and Appel embezzled more than $8,000 from Thomas's 2016 campaign for their own personal use. Appel is charged with 5 of the counts related to Sudan Thomas's case. Folks, this is what really, really pisses me off about people, I think, who are so dedicated about pursuing public office, but then abuse it. Now, I had the chance to interview Sudan Thomas on multiple occasions on my award-winning podcast, Talking Nuts, which, by the way, folks, new episodes will return in early April at blogtalkradio.com/talkingthehudson. But throughout 2016, 2017, I had the chance to interview Sudan Thomas on multiple occasions. He was a guy who made himself readily available for interviews as the president of the Board of Education. A single father who was dedicated to his family, so I thought, and dedicated to bettering the school district in Hudson County's largest city. But something went wrong, very, very wrong for Sudan Thomas. And I think that's where, ultimately, folks, that's where it breaks your heart, and it breaks your faith in people that say they want to run for public office, that they want to do the right thing, that they want to represent people and represent the interests of parents, especially in a district that's been under so much turmoil like it has been in Jersey City. And I had numerous conversations with Sudan Thomas throughout the years, very interesting podcast episodes. And again, we may not have always agreed politically, even though he tended to lean a little conservative. He wasn't always agreeing with my policy prescriptions, and I would always agree with his. But he was a guy that honestly, was genuine with me. So to hear of these allegations and to hear of him embezzling, to hear of him just misrepresenting money, I mean, it just makes you wonder, is anything sacred anymore when it comes to public office? And he's a guy, folks, so let's be honest, when he got elected back in 2016, everybody was talking about Sudan Thomas being, hey, this is a guy you might want to keep an eye on for 2017 to run for mayor or in the near future, maybe for a city council seat. Because again, folks, everybody was high on Sudan Thomas. His political capital and his political stock was as good as anybody's in the mid-2010s. Where he went wrong, what type of debt he fell into, I don't know. But it's sad because I know that he was a dedicated father. And he talked about it all the time, right? Being a single dad, having to deal with a tumultuous divorce, with a custody battle, with working in the private sector, and then being a president of the Board of Education, and then coming home to his son, who he had custody of. And I can tell you that he loved his little boy. He's a guy who loved his son immeasurably. To think he just veered wrong somewhere, to think that he just exercised poor judgment. I can't even imagine the untold harm that this caused his son and the rest of his family. Because again, folks, if you got to know Sudan Thomas like I did, you would just think he was a regular guy. That he was a guy that, again, was just dedicated to his constituency and dedicated to teachers, to parents, to administrators, to clerks, to staff, whatever, in all of the schools within the Jersey City School District. Much to my surprise and to my horror, to hear of all this embezzling and misrepresentation. And we're not talking about, folks, about a couple $100. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars. And again, everyone's entitled to their defense. Everyone's entitled to their day in court. But it seems like Sudan Thomas isn't going to get that. It seems like Sudan Thomas is going to have to take a plea deal and serve some serious jail time. Now, again, to the best of my knowledge, he doesn't have any prior convictions. He doesn't seem like a flight risk. Again, I don't know what the parameters are going to be by the U.S. attorney. But I'm assuming that they'll make an example of Sudan Thomas. And they'll make an example out of him to ensure that behavior like this isn't tolerated by anybody that runs to be a trustee with any Board of Education, whether it be in Jersey City, Hudson County, or anywhere in the state of New Jersey. We want transparency, folks. We want honesty. We want accountability. We want reliability. We didn't get that with Sudan Thomas. And it's a shame, folks, because that's the platform that he ran on for so many years, especially, again, within the Jersey City Board of Education. So, again, I don't want to sort of just, again, I believe in due process, folks. I believe in innocence before being proven guilty, okay? I believe in having your day in court. I believe in facing your accusers. I believe in making sure that all the evidence that you have possible to present in your defense is made available. But it doesn't seem that that's going to be the case here. He's gone through attorneys, and it seems like right now he's relying on a public defender. Nothing against public defenders. I used to work for the public defender's office many, many years ago. So I know they're all very capable and very dedicated attorneys. But it seems like the evidence is overwhelming against Sudan Thomas. So a plea deal could be imminent. Let's keep it in Jersey City, and a shout out to Mark Kosu from the Jersey Journal for his report on this story. Now, it's being reported, ladies and gentlemen, that visions of a 5,000-seat sports arena or even a 7,000-seat concert venue are not going to happen at Liberty State Park. The head of the State Department of Environmental Protection, the DEP, laid out general plans for the revitalization of Liberty State Park this past week, but he was specific in saying there will be no major commercialization or privatization of the state park on the Hudson River waterfront. According to DEP Commissioner Sean LaTourette, quote, privatization of a public asset that is owned by no one because it belongs to everyone is not a thing, period, full stop. Now, the news would appear to be a blow to the hopes of two groups that have been extremely vocal in their push for more active recreation at the park, Liberty State Park for All and the People's Park Foundation. Again, you can check out their social media sites on Facebook and, of course, on Instagram and Twitter collectively. Initial plans for the park that were announced in 2021 included dedicating 61 acres of the park to active recreation. Now, a brief overview of the program includes creating passive recreation and resilience features in the contaminated interior of the park, adding recreational amenities on Audrey Zapp Drive, and revitalizing the historic train sheds into an arts and crafts space, and a holistic master plan for the waterfront and the southern end. Now, the new program comes as Liberty State Park is caught in a tug of war over the balance between passive and active recreation and the risk of privatization encroaching into the park itself. In recent years, the main force behind privatization has been billionaire Paul Fireman, the former Reebok CEO and the owner of the nearby ultra-exclusive Liberty National Golf Course. He has sought to privatize Cave-In Point, a migratory bird habitat, to expand his golf course, saying at times that improvements could bring in major PGA tournaments and subsequently that revenue would benefit Jersey City and Hudson County altogether. The club is already in the rotation for the President's Cup, a U.S. versus the world competition. For all you golf fans, you know how important the President's Cup is. Now, last year, the billionaire was accused of influencing a fast-tracked controversial bill that created a task force to advise on short and long-term redevelopment plans for Liberty State Park. At the same time, Liberty State Park for All and the People's Park Foundation groups tied to Fireman supported the bill and linked it to their vision for the park that included a concert venue, a sports stadium, and a track and field stadium as well. The bill signed into law in less than 4 weeks after its creation prompted renewed fears by park activists of ultimate privatization. It was then revealed that the bill was promoted by lobbyists tied to Fireman's golf course, according to Politico. But for the time being, no privatization will be allowed in the park. LaTourette said. Now, Sam Pessin, the president of Friends for Liberty State Park, said in a statement that his group is supportive of the DEP's plans. Now, folks, let me just say this. As someone who enjoys going to Central Park, for someone who enjoys going to the PNC Arts Center down the shore, I'll be honest with you, folks, you can have some balance here. And I've interviewed, once again, councilmen and women in Jersey City, which, again, you can listen to on my podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkingthehudson, whether it's been Mira Prince Array, Amy DeGees, Yusuf Saleh, and many others. And they all have their sort of visions of what Liberty State Park should look like. But folks, if there's anything, listen, I'm all about revenue. I'm all about making sure that we don't get our taxes raised by any means. And we all know that sometimes if federal money's not coming in, if certain revenues are not being generated, then what's going to happen, folks? Whether it's Tom DeGees, the current county executive, or the next county executive, Craig Guy, or the city council, or the really the Hudson County Board of Commissioners, they're going to have to find a way to get revenues. And you know what? Instead of raising taxes, why not create an opportunity for revenues to be generated? Now, again, I don't want to destroy green space. I know all the eco warriors in Hudson County, right? All the social justice clowns and woke fools that go after me online and think that, oh, I just hate the planet. No, I don't hate the planet, you idiots. What I care about is being practical. You can still conserve green space at Liberty State Park. You want to go running. You want to have a picnic. You want to go to the ferry terminal. You want to, I don't know, do walks like I do every year for the American Cancer Society and the Making Strides Against Breast Cancer walk, or other walks for other nonprofit organizations, okay? But guess what? What you could also have is a small stadium arena, a small concert venue. I don't know about you folks, but you mean to tell me we couldn't draw a good number of acts and musicians and artists to come to Jersey City? We see it every 4th of July, don't we? With the fireworks spectacular that's hosted by Mayor Fulop and the city council. Haven't we seen Shaquille O'Neal, right? Haven't we seen Flo Rida? Haven't we seen Pitbull come to Jersey City for various events, right? Specifically during the 4th of July celebration. Why can't we bring them now? Why can't we have a small... Folks, no one's talking about creating the Prudential Center. No one's saying about building a stadium the size of MetLife, you know, that dump there in the Meadowlands. No one's talking about that. But if you have a small arena, okay, for concerts, just like the PNC Bank Art Center, maybe you have a small stadium for tournaments, right? That's not going to generate money? That's not going to generate revenue? Of course it is. But again, we can have a balance. It just seems like it's one or nothing. And unfortunately, that sort of extremism, that sort of hyperbole is what's permeating right now in this discussion. Again, I don't live in Jersey City, folks, so let me be very clear. Some people might say, well, Fernando, you don't live in Jersey City, you shouldn't opine. Hell yeah, I'm going to opine because I visit Jersey City quite often, whether it's going to Liberty House for political functions, whether it's going for picnics at Liberty State Park, or whether it's participating in marathons or walkathons for various charitable organizations. Liberty State Park is a part of me. I grew up on it. I grew up running there when I was a kid, going to, I don't know, play flag football, whatever, looking at the Twin Towers when I was a child. Now looking at the skyline of Manhattan, it's the most beautiful view in the world, okay? Why can't we have it both? Why can't we have green space and conserve a good portion of it and then use some of it to create arenas? Because guess what? Instead of driving down the Jersey Shore and the Garden State Parkway in the summer, which we all know, folks, is a pain in the ass, why can't we have shows up here? Why can't we have a small performing arts center in Liberty State Park? We have the Liberty Science Center. That's great. We can go to shows there and some sort of exhibits. When it comes to concerts or some sort of small sporting events, what's the harm? Again, folks, it just seems like, you know what? Then these same eco-warriors, all these leftists and all these social justice clowns, they'll be the first ones to bitch and moan, oh, why are my taxes going up? Why is the county executive or the board of freeholders / commissioners raising taxes? Because they need revenues. Maybe the sales tax isn't generating revenue. Guess what? Maybe they're not getting federal COVID money anymore. Maybe they're not getting enough state aid from Trenton. Guess what? Have to come up with that money somehow, and instead of raising taxes, why not make these amenities available? It generates revenue, it goes back into the county. And again, with that, I expect accountability. Because whenever we raise a tax of any kind, or we're trying to raise revenues, haven't we seen what's happening in Trenton with the gas tax, right? Was that supposed to fix the roads? I haven't seen one effing road being fixed in New Jersey. And wasn't that what the Transportation Trust Fund was supposed to alleviate, right, with the gas tax? So, yes, I remain skeptical of government when it comes to generating revenues. But I would argue that here in Hudson County, especially when we need it, I think I have trust in the county executive, whoever it's going to be, obviously, and the city council, along with the board of, freeholders and commissioners, respectively, to look at the revenues, to look at what's really, really important. And you know what? I think some sort of compromise can be reached. But again, folks, you have to bring everybody to the table. Everyone has to be willing to talk. And if they're not willing to talk, nothing's going to get done. And a final story here, one that really caught my eye, and I occasionally browse a lot of the editorials with the New Jersey Monitor. I get a shout out to Terrence McDonald, its editor. And oftentimes, I see some leftist bleeding heart nonsense on the site. But occasionally, I'll see an editorial that catches my eye. And one that talks about why we need to rethink policing in mental health crises. Again, a very interesting editorial by Zelly Thomas. So Zelly goes on to write, instead of safely addressing mental health crises, police involvement often leads to injury and even death. People experiencing a mental health crisis need to be met with support and care and not excessive force or violence. All right? If we don't take immediate action to divert mental health crises calls away from police and towards more trained mental health professionals, we might continue to see young black men and brown men as well as women in this country become hashtags instead of elders. The stark reality of police violence against individuals in the midst of a mental health crisis cannot be ignored. Now, studies again through the Washington Post talked about more than 1,700 people who are experiencing a mental health crisis have lost their lives at the hands of law enforcement since 2016. It's very continuing and very troubling data, though, folks, but it's something that, quite frankly, this editorial, I think, draws into account. Our brave men and women in police departments everywhere have a very, very difficult job. And, I don't envy them. They have to deal with any sort of crises anywhere at any time. And especially when we deal with the recent issues, obviously, that happened in past with Najee Seabrooks, it's something that, again, will stay on our peripheral vision. And again, whether it's about hashtags, virtue signaling, or really raising awareness about what are the dangers for people experiencing a mental health crisis, and what are the dangers for police officers that have to deal with people that are experiencing these crises, well, you know what? That's always up for debate. But I would argue that this is a good editorial to check out when it comes to dealing with mental health crisis. Yes, folks, it's not just important for counseling for all of us. We also need mental health counseling for our police officers. They're doing a tough job, and they need our support at all times. And that's our show for this week. Once again, to check out all the excellent programming brought to you by the Hudson Media Group, please go to their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com, as well as www.livestream.com/hmgtv. Don't forget to subscribe to the Hudson Media Group on YouTube, like them on Facebook, and of course, follow them on both Instagram and Twitter. Check out my own Instagram and Twitter, folks, at the Fernando Zone. Like me on Facebook, and of course, like Talking Politics with Fernando Uribe on Facebook as well. New episodes of the 7-time award-winning podcast, Talking Hudson, returns in early April by going to blogtalkradio.com/TalkingTheHudson from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's always Talking Politics right here with the Hudson Media Group. I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, top 100 Latino via the Latino Spirit online magazine, the weapon of mass disruption in Garden State media, and the people's choice and the people's voice. Yes, it's me, Fernando Uribe, saying so long, folks, and as always, thank you so much for watching.